Hellion has to have one of the highest learning curves of any game that I've played, and it is unforgiving when it comes to mistakes. I came close several times just saying forget it, this game was way too difficult, and it wasn't worth the frustration, but I couldn't let it go because I saw such great potential in the game. Hey, what is up guys, this is Shady Wags with Got Your Back Gaming, and I'm going to be sharing with you some beginner tips to help you get started in Hellion and avoid some of that frustration that I encountered. When you first start the game, you're going to begin in a cryogenic chamber. Look down and then hit the F key to climb out of the chamber. And you're now in your first base. This is not a ship, this is a base. And if you'd like to invite a friend to join you, you could go to the cryo chamber straight across from the one that you got out of. Hit F to open the cryo panel controls. Click on the button on the bottom. This is going to open another window. Now click on your friend's name and exit the menu, and they will then receive an invite. If this is your first base though, I don't recommend sending an invite at this point. And the reason is there's an airlock module and a ship floating outside your base, and both of those need to be docked to the base. Initially, it is very difficult to dock both of these, and chances are you're going to die in the process and have to start over. So I would not send any invites until you're confident that you can dock both of those. Another reason is there are only 2 spacesuits in the base, and it may require you to use both of those to get both the airlock and the ship docked. So the first thing I do is I go over to this supply closet and I put on the spacesuit. You want to put on the chest piece first. If you don't, you can't put on the other pieces. Just F to pick it up and then hold R to put that on. Now put on the helmet and then the jetpack. X will lower and raise your helmet visor, and T will turn on and off the jetpack. Now inside this base, there are multiple systems like life support and air filtration, and each one of these systems has parts attached to them. The parts have glowing lights which are either red, yellow, or green. Green meaning they are optimal, yellow they have sustained some damage, and red they need to be replaced. So eventually you're going to need to check each one of these parts and swap out parts as needed. But I'm not going to do that right now because there's no sense of going through all the hassle of swapping all these out if you can't get the airlock and the ship docked. Because if you can't, you're going to just have to start over again and do this all again. So right now it's just a waste of time. So I head over here to the power supply and I'm going to turn on the solar panels by clicking this button. And now I'm going to turn on the capacitor by clicking this button. Now I'll click on the consumption button. I'm going to go through here and click all these to on, and that's going to power the base up. The lights will turn on, and that's all I'm going to do for now. I'll head through this door, and as soon as I enter here, I will be weightless, so I'll float to the other side. And at this point, you want to make sure you have your visor down, and again, that is the X button. I'm going to open this door, and as soon as I open that, there will be a pressure change, and you're going to be sucked out and thrown away from the base. I don't want that, so before I hit this button to open the door, I'm going to turn on my jetpack, and again, that is the T button. I'm going to hit the button to open the door, then immediately begin holding the shift button down to stabilize myself, and that's going to prevent me from being thrown away from the base. Okay, we're going to stop right here. To use the jetpack effectively, you're going to need to use all the controls to maneuver yourself. So you want to familiarize yourself with these controls and get very comfortable with using them. This is probably the first reason I had such a difficult time because I was fumbling around with those controls. I was overcompensating or undercompensating. Using the jetpack, this is just really something you have to get a feel for. The mouse is used to steer yourself. W will push you forward. S will push you back. A is going to push you to the left, D to the right, Q will rotate you counterclockwise, E will rotate you clockwise, spacebar will push you up, and C will push you down. If you're spinning out of control or moving too fast, the shift button will stabilize you, and anytime you're near an object, hitting the shift button will also grab onto that object and stop you. Hitting F1 will also give you an overview of all the controls. Each key button press uses RCS fuel. RCS is Reaction Control System, a fancy name for a thruster. And each time you press or hold a button, it uses more fuel. and the amount of fuel you have is right here. Use quick key presses. It doesn't take much to push you in the direction you want to head. And you're going to need to get used to using these buttons in a back and forth style to fine tune where you want to head. So you may have to push A to push to the left, then immediately push D to push back to the right in order to keep a straight line. So using the jetpack in zero gravity is definitely a skill that you're going to have to work on in order to get to your targets quickly and safely. Okay, back to where we left off. I'm now outside the base, and I want to shut that door. And the reason is you can't dock a module to the base if the door is open. And that's something I wish I would have known, because that probably would have saved me about 10 lives. So if you are planning on docking here, you want to hit that button and shut the door. Now I am officially in space, and I need to locate the airlock module as quickly as possible, because we do have limited oxygen in this jetpack. And that's one of those things you have working against you as a new player. Time is really of the essence. Between learning how to control the jetpack, locating the module, getting it back to the base and dock successfully before you run out of oxygen, it's a big obstacle to overcome. So don't get discouraged if you fail and have to start over. It took me probably close to, no lie, 50 times doing this before I even got my first airlock docked. But every time I tried, I got better and better, and I started cutting time off my attempts. If you hit the K button, it will pull up a list of targets in the area, and you're also going to get a map at the bottom of the visor. And to cycle through those targets, you're going to use the arrow keys. I see the module, so I'm going to hit W to begin thrusting towards it. What I would actually do is, if you're new to this, is aim towards the center of the module. Use the W key to push forward, and use the up and down thrusters, spacebar and C, to try to hit right into the center. And when you make contact, hit the shift key to grab on. Once you have grabbed on, you're then going to be able to maneuver yourself around that module much easier without getting thrown off too far away. If your oxygen is low at this point, you can go into the module and get another jetpack. I personally preferred not to, because I wanted to get good enough at this that I could get this back in one attempt. But if you do feel like you need to resupply your oxygen, there are jetpacks in the airlock. Now that you're at the airlock module, look for the flashing light, and right beside that flashing light is the docking controls. Open the cover to reveal the control panel, then F to enter into the docking controls. There are two windows in the docking control. The first window, this is the one that you first get when you enter into the docking controls. This is a much wider camera view, and it's used to target modules. So the items in this list over here. And to select different modules, you use the arrow keys. Now I have a module selected. You'll see the arrow on the outside octagon pointing towards the direction of that targeted module. I'm not going to use any directional keys right now. I don't want to move this airlock yet. I just want to point it towards the base. So I'm going to use the mouse and very slowly start dragging the mouse towards the arrow until I get that base into view. If anytime you feel the airlock is spinning out of control, then hit the shift key to stabilize it. Eventually, I'm able to get that base into my view. You cannot dock from this screen. Well, you probably could, but it would be extremely difficult. So hit the R button, and that brings up the docking screen that's going to allow you to lock onto docking ports. The ports are listed here, and to change those ports, you're going to use your left mouse button. Begin slowly moving the mouse until you get that base into view. Once you have the base into view, the docking port you have selected will be glowing orange. Now we'll begin moving the airlock using the same directional keys as the jetpack. I wish I could give you guys some super easy method to do this, but unfortunately, there's not. The only real tip I can give you is 1, take your time and move slow. 2, keep the small arrow in the middle octagon on top. And you can do that by using the Q and E buttons to rotate the airlock. This takes a lot of fine, quick button presses back and forth to line this thing up perfectly. You want the small octagon to line up perfectly with the orange octagon of the dock port as you approach. And also remember to use your mouse to steer the airlock. I can't emphasize enough about approaching this slowly and taking your time. You don't want to slam into it, because if you do, several bad things could happen. If you go full throttle and slam into it and you don't successfully dock, it can spin you and the base completely out of control. And that's going to make it pretty much impossible for a second attempt. You could possibly slam into the ship, sending the ship flying off into space, and that's basically just going to leave you stranded, so game over. So slow is the key here. Once you have it lined up, tap W to go forward, and the airlock will then dock to the base. If it does bounce off, it was either because the door's not shut or it just was not lined up straight enough. Don't get frustrated if you don't dock it and you run out of oxygen. Just respawn and do a fresh start. This is one of those things that it's just a matter of getting a feel for it. And like I said before, it took me about 50 tries before I was even able to get my first one docked. And now I can dock these things in like a minute flat. Once the airlock is docked, approach the door and go into the airlock controls, depressurize the chamber, then open the outer door. The airlock control on the inside will then be on the opposite side of the door. Go ahead and close the outer door and then repressurize the chamber. And now you can head back into your base. So finally, you have the airlock docked. Well, you can't celebrate very long because now you need to dock the ship to the airlock. I'm going to go ahead and take this jetpack off and put it onto the recharging station and put on the other jetpack so I have more oxygen. There are also 2 more suits in the airlock, and one of those is a better suit if you prefer to use that suit instead. I'm back outside the base, and I'm going to jetpack over to the ship. The ship does have an airlock on top, so you're going to have to depressurize, open the outer door, enter, close the outer door, and pressurize again. Once the pressure is restored, hit the door panel and head down the stairs. To the left is the power supply, and just like in the base, I'm going to turn on the solar panels, turn on the capacitor, and then turn on all the systems to power up the ship. And then I'm going to make my way to the cockpit. On the dashboard, I'm going to hit the docking button and move into docking controls. And this is going to be the exact same way as docking the airlock, except this time there's no rush on oxygen. There is oxygen in the ship. The ship also has more RCS fuel, so there's no rush here. You can take your time with this one. The ship does have to be docked to the airlock, so make sure you have the airlock selected. The ship, in my opinion, is a little more difficult to dock. It's a little bit more touchy, but like I said before, there is no rush on this. I also did notice, unlike the airlock, using the roll keys work in the opposite directions. So Q rolls you right and E rolls you left. From the first screen, select module, and from the second screen, you have to have airlock port selected. And I can't stress enough about using a slow approach. Like on this attempt here, I failed the first time, but only knocked me back a little, so I was able to recover and try again. And you can see on this one, it was not even perfect and it still docked. Once you have that ship docked, now you can celebrate. You have successfully docked the airlock and the ship, and by this time you should have a pretty good understanding of docking, how it works, and be able to do this much quicker and easier in the future. So now the last thing we have to do is replace all the parts throughout the base, the ship, and the airlock. In the base there are 2 storage units. Go ahead and open those up. There are 3 systems in the base. The first one is air filtration, which is right here. And you can see the servo meter is red, so that part needs replaced. I'm going to go ahead and hit F to take out that faulty part. I'll go back over to the supply box and take out a green servo meter. I'll hit tab, locate the bad servo, and drag it to the middle circle to place it into my hands, and then place that bad servo into the box. I hit tab and then select the 100% servo meter to place that part into my hands and then place that back into the spot. Right underneath is the spot for the CO2 filters. Go ahead and open that up. Go over to the first box and grab 2 filters and place them into their spots. Now you're going to repeat this same process throughout the base, the ship, and the airlock, going to each system and replacing the faulty parts with new parts if they're available. So I hope this video helps you out. You have a much easier time starting out in Hellion than what I did. Please hit that thumbs up button, and until next time, I will talk to you later.